what we talked about yesterday when we're looking at the divides and the potential 22 genetic programs that are playing out here on Earth, and how we're continually separated through geographical regions, languages, skin color, these type of things. The topic that we chose to tackle here at Contact was really about unity, looking at the divides that are happening in the community right now, and really trying to figure out a way to bridge those divides and bring people together despite of their differences and work towards a common goal. And so today, we're going to explore a different format. What we're going to do, first of all, we have Jordan Sather from Destroying the Illusion joining us. And followed by Justin Deschamps from Stillness in the Storm. And then, of course, Corey Goode. So the format today, I could probably equate it to like a town hall meeting. The idea is that up on the slides here, you're going to get a prompt of questions. And these questions are to stir community dialogue right now. Justin, Jordan, and Corey are going to approach these questions, talk about them, and then myself and Renee in the blue shirt here will be walking throughout the crowd. And if you have a comment or a question to ask involving these topics, we'll come to you, set you up with the microphone. Please be concise with your questions. Make them so it's one question. We can take the microphone from you and move on. Let's not hold the mic and continue the dialogue. The idea with this format is when you get people dialoguing together, that breaks down the divide. Everybody has their different belief systems. Everybody has their different perceptions on what their search for truth is. But the common goal is that we're all walking together doing that. That's what unites us all. And in that way, when you start talking about it, the schizophrenic consciousness that is that co-creative consciousness of Earth right now, where everything's been compartmentalized, everything's been separated, that schizophrenia can be healed through dialogue. That schizophrenia can be remedied by conversations back and forth, exploring these topics openly with an open heart. And also in those places, look where you're triggered. Why are you triggered? If something hits you on an emotional level where you have an immediate response, it's probably because something's there. If you're not able to sit with something neutrally and really see how it resonates in the body and in the heart, and you're in that triggered response, generally it's something to look at to clear. What are the programs, what are the social conditions that we all exist under to create these? So the format, is a little bit different, but I think some interesting energy is going to be created here today. So first here, does duality play a role in the various components of the 22 genetic programs? And Corey, we'll start with you.
All right, glad I made you the moderator. Of course, duality plays a role. Yeah, it is. Are we good? Can't hear me? Okay. If it keeps happening, just bring me another mic. Of course, duality plays a role in the 22 genetic programs. The thing is, it's all about perspective. Us being down here in the Petri dish, we have the perspective of being manipulated and violated. The point of view of these beings is that they're taking a part in a cosmic dance that occurs all over the universe, to where people are manipulated and controlled on a genetic, spiritual level until they reach a point to where they become a spacefaring race and begin to manage their own, genetic and social advancement. So a lot of it has, duality, a lot of it has to depend on our point of view.
Justin?
Yeah, certainly. I think when you think about duality, it helps me to understand the concept of polarity. So in the Hermetic philosophies, there's a principle of polarity, and that states that there's two opposites to everything, and the thing that unifies the polarity is your point of view. You are the unifier of the polarity. So a good example of that is your right and left hand. That is unified by the trunk of your body, and it just so happens that your heart is right where these two arms extensions of your body meet. So I think when we think about the duality of the programs, It's our perspective. We're looking up, trying to figure out what these programs are, and they're looking down with their own agendas. And we can take those two perspectives and consider both of them to find the unified center and start to transcend some of that duality, I think.
Jordan, you got a comment?
When I look at Earth, I think of it as being essentially like a learning ground. And duality is crucial, especially in these genetic programs, because without duality, you wouldn't learn. Without having a dark, you would have no light. So understanding that there is this duality of both of them, then you're able to understand, well, if I didn't have the darkness, then I wouldn't be able to understand what the light is like. I wouldn't be able to understand how good feeling good is without understanding how feeling bad is. So you then understand, well, if this Earth is a learning ground, well, that duality is necessary because it's helping us come to that consciousness. And then with these times of disclosure, I mean, all this information coming out, we're seeing all the darkness coming out. Well, that's essentially allowing us to feel, once we're able to transcend that darkness, we can then see how
Evolution
good
through
things are gonna
stress.
be. Yeah, exactly. The evolution will happen. So, I mean, it's necessary.
Any questions from the audience here? And as we're going through, if certain things prompt you guys for questions, shoot a hand up regardless of coming to the end of that, because then we can kind of position ourselves to get you the mic there. So, looks like, go ahead.
My question for Corey is, do you think we could do something, an interview with you and Cobra and David together and really just put it all together for us, like in a joint union? You talked yesterday about unity. I think it's important for Cobra, you, and David to all come together so we can get, I have to, I guess, talk in the mic a little hard, and all come together so we can unite and really get the whole big picture of everything, like all the sides, because I think we're missing the Cobra information. I think that's really important. So I think more joint interviews. So I guess my question is, can you, do you think you could do more interviews with Cobra and David possibly?
Well, I can possibly do more interviews with Cobra, but the point that we want to make about, there it goes again. The point that we want to make with this movement is that it's not about me and my information. It's not about Cobra and his information. It's about everyone who is listening and digesting that information coming together and not focusing on the information, because the information is what divides us. We argue over the details instead of coming together over the big picture, which is that, whatever we've been doing in this field for the last 80 years, 70 years, it hasn't worked. It's time to think outside the box and, come together and become more active socially.
We're going to move to the next slide. Let's see here. What do we got? Why is duality important in this experience here?
I think so. We'll see.
So again here, why is duality important? You want to start this one off, Justin?
Sure. Well, I think duality is important because it's, as Jordan was mentioning, it's part of how we grow. One duality that the Cabal has kind of used as their motto is order out of chaos. And that's not theirs. It's a universal principle. So when you have chaos, you have a situation where there's lack of organization. And then what consciousness does, what love does, is it brings order to the chaos. So duality, in that sense, is part of the evolutionary mechanism that we use to better understand ourselves, better understand who we are, and then how we interact with others in this big game of the universe.
Yeah. You guys want to comment on that also?
I think duality also gives us contrasts. We can, between what we consider light and dark, there's a full spectrum in between. And as we experience different parts of that spectrum, we get life experiences that we can draw off of to, form this lens that I was talking about in other talks that we use to filter all information.
Will you give that metaphor again? I know that's something that a lot of people have heard, but it's something that for new people it would be great to hear.
Sure. The metaphor that I used was that none of us really have the truth, the ultimate truth. We have all spent the last however long we've been spending time during this awakening, 5, 10, 50, 60 years. We've been spending that time doing what everyone else is, looking at the ground, picking up little pieces, trying to make sense of them, putting them in our little dish here, and each of those is like a grain of sand that we add to the little dish, and then we grind that into our lens. And then we use that lens to hold up to all information. You can say information coming in as light. Well, all of the distortions in that lens are going to refract that light or information as you're processing it. So we have to be willing to not have a rigid belief system, but be able to regrind that lens as we grow and as we learn. And many people just are not willing to do so. They have that lens and distortions and all, that's what they're going to hold up to any new information coming in.
Jordan?
I kind of piggybacking off Corey's statement, I usually think of it as like a puzzle. And when most people look at truth and try to seek truth, their puzzle is very rigid. And they already have, their belief system is conformed, so whenever a data piece comes in, it's black and white to them. They'll throw some out, they'll keep the ones that they like. But the thing is, with proper truth seeking, you have to take every single piece of data you can and alter your puzzle as needed. So that's really what we have to do, is understand that nobody, like you said, nobody has the absolute truth. Nobody has the 100% picture of what's going on. Everybody only has their relative truths, which is their individual perspectives. And nobody, I don't care who you are, I don't care what your name is, you're never going to have the absolute truth. So that's what we all need to really understand.
And to the audience here, any hands up on questions?
So following on what you just said, it occurs to me that there's a critical question now, which is how to bring this conversation to a much wider audience, and what are the ramifications of doing that because of their filters and the way that their truth process, which is most likely, we would look at it as sort of different than ours. We're already here. We self-selected to be here. But yes. We aren't going to, like you said, we need to do something different. And that's one of the different things we need to do. Right?
Right. Yes. And, that's what we're attempting to do here. I'm sorry, what was the first part of your question? What was he addressing?
How do we bring it out
to the mainstream?
Okay, and then what do you do about the different lenses? Okay. Now, when it comes to everybody's different lens or their truth, what we need to do is form a coalition of people that overcome their human nature enough to say, we're not going to focus on our individual lenses, we're going to focus on the goal. And the goal is not to do this out of ego and try to present our narrative over other people's narratives. What we need to do is quash their narratives a little bit, find a way to get this information to the mainstream in a way they can digest it, and as they awaken, they're going to start looking into our information and find their way to us anyway. So if we can get a lot of the researchers, a lot of the different people out there that have different groups to, people that, I'm perfectly willing to work with people that think I'm full of it and don't like me. I don't care. It's all about the end results. It's not about ego. And if we can get people to overcome that egocentric way of looking at things, then we can make a huge difference. And a lot of these different media things that we're doing are ways to get this and plant it in the seed of the mass consciousness. And we're also trying to create a network for everyone else out there that's trying to get their message out, to have a platform to do it. So it's a big initiative that we have, and it's multi-tiered, and it leads up to us wanting disclosure, obtaining disclosure, and then having a post-disclosure plan, which is what we've discussed about the sociologist initiative to have a post-disclosure plan for people as they learn the truth, if we get a full disclosure.
Justin, how about your thoughts on what could be a way of getting this out there, and then what is the responsibility of the people that are doing that?
Sure. Well, I think first of all, as far as what we as individuals can do is learn how to practice tolerance and gratitude for other people's perspective. like what we were just talking about, duality. Since none of us knows the whole truth, we all can work together. I mean, everybody in this audience right now has a different perspective on us, and we have a perspective on you. And instead of trying to make my perspective the one that you need to believe, we can all work together to form a holistic perspective. So, and we need to be able to garner gratitude and tolerance. So it's really, as an individual, when you want to share truth with other people, I think one of the things that I learned very quickly is that you have to respect them in their process. I didn't wake up in 10 minutes, and I don't know if it's okay to expect that of somebody else. You know? So be willing to like work with what their interests are. Share the information that you think that they might be interested in, and then when you develop rapport, they feel safe to be vulnerable, to have their lens repolished, as Corey said, then we can start to make progress. But it's a process, I think.
Jordan, your thoughts on getting it out there and that, you know, stewarding that in?
Courage. These topics that we're talking about here at this conference, I mean, it's fantastic to see 3,000 to 4,000 people all coming together for the same issues. But when we go back out into our own personal lives, and many people live double lives, you know, where they research this information, then they have to go to work and not talk about it for 8 hours a day. And the biggest thing that we need is to begin to find the courage to speak about these things and just plant the seeds in our own friends and family, because those seeds are what's going to grow into them searching for more information like this. And I mean, I run a YouTube channel where I just click at the camera and talk, and really the main reason I'm doing it is because I want to show people that they can have courage to talk about these things and not feel bad about it. So that's my opinion. The biggest thing that we can do is just
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's another, I guess, major point of the media projects that we're trying to get going, is that
Absolutely.
It's going to be a way to introduce some of these ideas and concepts to family that aren't open to really discussing it in a entertaining way, but a way that will make them think and plant seeds with them.
And one point, bringing duality back into the picture, when you have the courage to start speaking about these things, you don't just focus on the negative part of the duality, which was what many people do, and that then catalyzes whoever they're talking to completely disassociate everything they're talking about and think they're crazy. We have to bring in, okay, you have to look at this darkness, but bring the light into the picture too. When you do that, this is the world that's possible. And that is much more, that sells it a lot easier to the mainstream when you bring both aspects of it into the picture. So.
You know, when listening to you guys talk about that right now, it's interesting to look at what it does take to not have that dual, you know, were you good? The idea of not living two lives, you know, and the courage that it takes, as Jordan's saying there, to step out of that and start dialoguing with your families. And as Corey was saying too, you know, creative projects, any place that you guys can take this information in a creative way that doesn't trigger that, you know, laugh response, the giggle response, the knee-jerk reaction that comes with these things. Any creative ideas that you guys have, I encourage you to use those in tandem with courage to start reaching out right now, because what's happening on the planet where the vibrations are coming up, this is drawing it out of everyone. Nobody can hide from this. And so even though you may have family members that in your mind they could never even approach these topics, there is something that's happening on an internal level for them that is bringing this stuff up for them. And if you're there to access that dialogue with them in a small way or in an artistic way, a creative way, out of the box way, the momentum of them being prompted to do that work is going to be exponential. Got some questions in the back here?
Yeah, Corey, I really admire you guys up there for putting together your plans to network with people around the world. I was just wondering if you were familiar at all with the movie Thrive
Yes.
Foster Gamble put out, and that was really successful, went all the way around the world. And I think I was wondering if you had any connections with him at all,
Yeah,
network with his group of people.
Yeah, we had dinner with him at the New Living Expo, and we had a really good talk. They're a little bit in the background that we're working on together, but They are right now working on Thrive 2. I don't know if everyone knew that, but they're working on Thrive 2.
Yeah, I just was thinking that relevant to what you're talking about is the concept from psychology of cognitive dissonance. So when you have one pre-existing worldview, and then you start getting information from a different perspective, you can do, first of all, just block it out and not even know you're blocking it out. And then another one is to sort of be aware of the alternate information, but not change your own view right away, and then ultimately change your own point of view. And so I think that's relevant to what you're talking about. And
Yeah, and Jordan, didn't you make some similar comments in a recent video? You were quoting, making a lot of quotes that were pertinent.
Yeah, and the other, oh, sorry.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, just, I mean, the whole spiritual path is about,
whiteboard.
the whole spiritual path is about waking up to your own conditioning and then more
Yes.
consciously choosing what parts you want to keep and what parts you want to let go and what new things you want to let in.
Agreed.
So that's all, yeah.
A man named Dr. Wayne Dyer said one time, a belief system is simply having the same thought over and over and over and over again. So that, right? And as Aristotle also said, the mark of an educated mind is to entertain a thought without accepting it. So that's really what we have to do, is entertain all thoughts and not get in the same belief patterns over and over.
Got a question over here.
Hello, hi everybody. Thank you, all three of you, for being up there today. And I just want to acknowledge the courage part, Jordan, because for instance, I work as an airline attendant, and I was having a conversation with a captain in the cockpit the other day, and I was like, oh, I'm going to this convention.
Yeah. Here we go. Yeah.
And
that's a touchy topic for pilots.
Absolutely is. But I proceeded to tell him, I've had experiences and sightings since I was 13 years old. And, he's like, oh, well, were your neighbors playing tricks on you? Or, are you sure that wasn't a flare? And, and I said, I understand that you have walls that are up in place for when this type of information is coming out to you. So I'm not taking offense to that. But with that in mind, just listen to what I have to say, because you asked me the question, so I'm going to answer it. So the whole topic of having courage is, for myself, was removing the fear of humiliation. Exactly. And that's a huge, huge boundary, yes, I think, for the whole process, because we're so afraid to be humiliated. We're so afraid to be different. We're so afraid to be not like the other people. But in the same sense, we aren't, because we had that experience. So I find it, as Linda Moulton-Howard, she said, I may be a contactee, and she said part of the process of that is being able to develop the basically the fortitude and the foundation to say, this is what happened to me. I don't necessarily know what it means, but I'm not going to pretend like it didn't happen either. So how do all three of you encourage others to come out and speak, not necessarily their truth, but about their experience, just to have the courage to stand up and say, hey, this is different.
Right.
What's amazing about that is that some people will have a knee-jerk reaction of having their walls up, but this stuff is so interesting that most of the time people really want to talk about it. They just have the fear within themselves. So if you let a little bit slip, just say the word UFO. They'll
That's what I was about to
start
say.
coming out and just blah, 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 and ask all kinds of questions. So
Yeah, spoon feed them.
and then just spoon feed them.
Don't, walk in and say, let me tell you about these Blue Avians.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Blue birds. Oh.
Yeah, you gotta seed them a little bit before you go there. That's where I lose people.
The bluebird part.
Yeah.
And golden triangle heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also think it's about being able to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
It takes, when you're facing something uncertain, especially something to deal with losing social prestige in our world could mean life and death and reputation. So being able to be confident, being able to be okay with being vulnerable, and then allowing other people to feel vulnerable, because the pilot you were talking to, he probably fears for his life if anybody ever heard that he may even think UFOs are real. So being able to respect that and where he's coming from can be really helpful when you're sharing information with people.
Renee, we got a question?
We're a fairly small group, I think. There's, I don't know how many here today, but and then the one in Silicon Valley last year. There was a pretty large group there. But my question is this happening all over the world? Are people watching the History Channel and Ancient Aliens in other countries? Are there people like us in other countries in the world that are doing the same thing we're doing?
Absolutely. Yes. We have a huge, what are the demographics? A huge Spanish-speaking audience, Portuguese, Chinese-speaking audience, French. Well, I mean, yes, it's all over. It's all over. And next year, in response to that, we're going to be doing a world tour. So, yeah. It's about to become even more so because Gaia is, they're translating all of their videos into Spanish right now, and then next they're going to translate it into Portuguese, and then I believe Chinese next. So yeah, it's going to be put in a format that a lot more people can read, and we already translate all of the transcripts into 11 different languages, and those get hit like crazy. People are reading the information. It's reaching a lot more people through the different languages that we've put it out than just through, some people have been a little bit skeptical about us working behind a paywall, but we're reaching so many people through YouTube and social media and then the transcripts, which are bringing more people to see the show. So it is worldwide, it's global.
I'll comment on that also. I do a lot of traveling overseas, and especially in rural villages. I work with all different types of fair trade communities, and one of the things that I talk with them about is their traditions and their history. And something happened in Nepal and in India where the myth of the jinn is tied in deeply into that culture. And so there's a disconnect sometimes. Everybody's witnessing these phenomena. Everyone's having experiences, but they're perceiving them through their own cultures, understanding of what those might be. So when Corey's talking about going and doing a global tour and really trying to, bring this information in multiple languages, it gives an established, learning base of information that may allow people to see outside of their social, religious conditionings to start understanding more what is actually going on right now. Got another question up here.
Hey. So contact protocol kind of states that when we come together to have the dialogue, kind of have the experience and have invocation of these beings, we kind of accelerate the disclosure contact timeline. Seems like maybe we could be in agreement with that. I'm just curious for those who are looking to maybe self-organize to move this forward, what the recommendations are in terms of building other gatherings, groups, coming together to do this work.
Good question.
So right now, one of the members of our kind of collective of artists and professionals has put something together called newearth.network. And what this is it's basically a meetup site for people in the UFO community. And so if you go on now, it's tied to all the meetup groups from meetup.com also as a bonus. But you can create your own meetup group in your own town. And so whether you want to start with a few people in your home, maybe you want to call a town meeting. These are things that can happen. So if you guys explore that platform, it's newearth.network, you'll see there are hundreds of groups right now that have already started that. There are people mobilizing and doing even protests. And
they're just not organized.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Network together and organize.
Exactly.
That's the key.
So that's a great way to do that. newearth.network. Renee?
There's a lot of talk right now about a global raising of consciousness. And Corey, you've had a lot of high-level psychic training. Could you give us an idea of what your daily meditational practices look like and what kind of psychic tools you use that we could possibly learn about?
Yes, I was talking to Roger this morning. There is I'm trying to remember, his last name is O'Donnell. I'm trying to remember the name of this remote viewing course. If anyone can look that up real quick, it's Probable Future, I believe. It is a really good program. It's not the best for getting you really into protocols of remote viewing, but it will help you get into, I guess, the practice of going through the different octaves, if you wish, the states of consciousness. And it will really help you get to a point to where you don't have to go through the full octave. You can jump. Gerald O'Donnell. Yes. What's the name of his website? Yep. ProbableFuture.com. That's it. So it's a very good system for getting you, I guess, not only psychically trained on different levels, but helps you develop a meditative program that's going to go a lot deeper, and it doesn't take you as long to get into your meditative states. You can almost jump right into them. And there's a good course he has on remote influencing as well, which basically enhances your ability right now to co-create and manifest. So that's a really good course that I hope to work something out with him to where we do something together. But personally, sometimes I don't have the ability to do a daily meditation. I've got so much going on, craziness happens, and I just can't get into that place. So I spend a lot of time up in my head. I'm the INFJ personality type. We're barely tethered to the ground. So I'm always up here processing. And daydreaming and processing, that is a type of meditation. So if you spend a lot of time contemplating, that's a form of meditation. Does that answer your question?
And a comment on that too is that when I first started going into meditation and exploring it, the idea that I was stuck with in my mind of what meditation should be was to be achieving complete silence, which was daunting, Trying to do that to quiet the mind is a tough one. So I came up against this wall of I can't meditate. And somebody pointed me to a video, it was actually of the Dalai Lama, and he was talking about his practices of meditation. That he's got this really obscure sleep cycle where he's got 4 hours on meditation, 4 hours back on. But he talks about when he wakes up from his first cycle of sleep, he just daydreams. And that is his meditation. And so when I heard that, I was like, I daydream all day. I got that. I can handle that.
Constantly in a meditative state.
Yeah, constantly in a meditative state. Corey's mic is off right now. So what I started exploring was daydream sessions. Being able to take an hour or half hour, especially right before bed, and get into a place of exploring the daydream. See where it leads you, The imagination is infinite in that experience. So, we good on the mics? Next question here.
Corey, yesterday you talked about being told by the Blue Avian that the next 3 years, 3.5 years are very special. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yes. It was stated that 6 months ago that the next 3.5 years were critical for our mass consciousness. Our mass consciousness in that window is choosing the temporal reality. Is this breaking out? What's going on? Maybe if we put all three together, one of them will work. I lost my cadence there. The temporal reality. During that time period, as a group, we are deciding which temporal reality we are going to experience. It's not being done for us, we're choosing it. And the powers that be, if you will, are manipulating us and our co-creative consciousness to create the temporal timeline that they want. And what has to occur is that people like us start to seed the mass consciousness the best we can and also raise our vibrations, because one individual that raises their vibration and awareness, it spreads like the 100th monkey effect. And if we can get more and more people... If we can get more... This is frustrating. If we can get more and more people to begin to do the work, to wake up, then the 100th monkey effect will...
It's just mute, it's not the cabal.
fired. Basically, what we need to do is seed the consciousness the best we can. A small number of people can be a rudder. We can act like a small group can act like a rudder for the greater mass consciousness. So, it's up to us to kick in that hundredth monkey effect and make it, a millionth, a billionth monkey effect, to where we're going to initiate a consciousness renaissance. We're the ones that are going to do it.
So you guys are going to use this mic here?
Just share, I guess. Yeah. And I think part of the technique for that is something that I've been studying a lot. Like, how do we actually steer collective consciousness? And I think this brings it right back into the concept of duality. So what I think the Cabal does to us is they weaponize duality. They make duality something that destroys us, inside, outside. We're divided and conquered internally. We're divided and conquered outside of us. And it's partially because we try to only focus on the light and ignore the darkness. So one of the things that does is it doesn't change the way we see the world. So if you see something in your experience as bad and you don't look at it, then it stays in your own mind as bad. So you give it that consciousness. The consciousness becomes negative. It's disorganized. So when you look at all of the things in the world, and you, as much as you possibly can, transmute that and actually turn it into something beneficial and positive because you've infused it with truth. You see how it connects to everything, especially when you bring the spiritual perspective in. It can take seemingly any negative thing and turn it into something positive. I mean, there's so many experiences in my life that at the time I did not want to experience, and now they become my foundation for who I am now. So I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind. When we make our own house in order, when we make our own temple pure and perfect, that allows the spirit to come in through us, and then we shine that out, and we become radiations and beacons for other people. So,
Jordan?
I don't have anything to say to that. That was perfect, my friend. That was awesome.
We're going to take a question in the front here.
Next question.
Just building on what you just said, it sounds like what I call inclusional recontextualization.
I like that.
As a weapon, if you will, against divide to conquer. If something looks like opposition, like if we say, okay, we're going to try and get to the moon, and someone says we can't do it because we don't have the right kind of metal to build the rocket, and we don't have the right kind of fuel to get us there, then with inclusional recontextualization, you say, okay, good. You, instead of being my opposition, are now my partner. You're in charge of developing the metal and developing the fuel, because what we're going to do is get to the moon. The opposition becomes partners, and the opposing facts become simply the next problems to solve, because we're going to get there no matter what.
Exactly.
And that's almost transcending duality. So duality supports consciousness because when you understand it, you realize that both sides are trying to weigh you down, and they're both fitting you into a belief system. You could take Democrats, Republicans, doesn't really matter. They're both weighing you down. So duality supports expanding consciousness because when you understand that, you're able to then transcend it and realize that you don't need it. It's just helping you evolve. So.
Renee, are we good on your mic wherever you are? Yes. You got one more comment on the right side of the room over here.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that it's, especially in politics or any type of social, political issue, we tend to settle into these camps and tribes, and tribalism is a huge thing that the Cabal uses against us. So one of the things that can be really helpful, like I was speaking about earlier, is developing tolerance, being able to listen to what somebody else has to say. It doesn't mean that you have to believe it or even support it, but just listening gives you a different perspective on your own beliefs, and you may gain insight. And in that sense, your competition can be your best allies. I've learned so much from listening to the opposition, and I'm sure you guys could agree. So.
Mm-hmm. And any word with an ist or ism on the end of it is very dangerous to associate yourself with. So putting yourself into that is almost feeding into the duality, into the belief system. So always be detached, the detached observer, and always be wary of labeling yourself.
And the biggest way to show someone respect is to let them know that you're hearing them, you're listening to them. If you're sitting there just trying to think of a way to rebut what they're saying, then the dialogue is never going to go anywhere, and it's going to go quickly to ego. So it's retraining ourselves how to interact with each other, because we're so programmed to be that way already, because we have our truth or our lens, and we've worked like crazy to get that, and we want to protect it. It's our natural instinct, and listening to someone else that has especially an opposing view can be very difficult. Depending on where you are in your journey, it's still not hard to be triggered and reflect back negative energy. Because people can read that no matter what you're saying.
Yeah.
They can read the energy.
And there's a big difference between reacting and responding. And most people, because their egos are so ingrained in their belief systems, they always are in fear when they're, they go into cognitive dissonance, and they're scared when their belief systems are being challenged. So you have to take a step back. Don't let fear shut down those parts of your brain that critically think, and then take time to respond with a much more logical thought process.
We got a question on the side of the room with Renee.
Yes, hi. I have two questions, if I may ask. But before that, I want to let you know that Monroe Institute in Virginia, it's quite advanced in the study of consciousness, and they have a lot of courses and classes. I just came from one. Asking my first question. First caveat, I'm not trying to state anything about belief or disbelief. I'm just asking this question. There is a specific belief system that, as you know, in different religion about the purpose of life. And there is one, we hear about New Age as to raising the consciousness. And then there is one about ascension. So, since you have interacted with people from different dimension, higher dimension than us, what are their understanding of the purpose of these virtual realities that we all are in?
What is their understanding of what?
The virtual reality and the purpose behind.
The purpose between virtual reality?
That we all have, yes, we are part of.
You're talking about like technical virtual reality?
Maybe I should not use that terminology. What is their belief system about the purpose of this life that we are continuously going through reincarnation?
Trying to wrap our third density or third, fourth transitional density minds around the way fourth density beings even think and process things is pretty much impossible for us. I've tried. And I mean, I've interacted with them, and it's just, so at a consistent belief system is in oneness and in stewardship to the cosmos and returning to source. That seems to be a theme among all of these different beings. A lot of the times I'll ask them for advice about things that they see as a third density, third density way of thinking that really is of no consequence. So the way we look at things and process things and the way they do is completely different, and they're more on a oneness level, a shared consciousness and experience level than we are. And until we become more fourth density, we're not even going to be able to fathom it, to process it.
Okay. Got another question over here.
Corey, when you were inside Venus and you were shown the destruction of Mars, was that some kind of a CGI reenactment, or was that actual video of it happening?
Oh no, that was one of our artists put that together. And,
no, there was a being inside Venus that showed you.
Oh, you're talking about the Sentinel. Yeah. He was an intelligent projection. There was an intelligence to him. You could feel the being interacting with you, but it was a intelligent projection from that technology. And the same thing when we went to outside of Saturn to that same space, that temporal anomaly area, to where they had the exact same base in it as they did around Jupiter. And it was the same thing there. He was obviously projected, but there was an intelligence there.
Was it a reenactment of the
No.
cataclysm? It was
No.
the actual video of it happening?
It was a projection, almost of like the holodeck. And it was a sentient, real-time interaction with this being.
I still don't get was what you saw, was it something that was video of it really happening, or was it just a reenactment of it
A
happening?
reenactment. It was
Like
real time.
Like an animated or a 3D reenactment or something like that, whereas like there might have been someone with a video camera of some kind back then that took footage of it, or?
No, it was in real time interacting with us. So it wasn't like a program that was just repeating over and over. It was sentient. It was alive.
Got another question over here. Go ahead, Renee.
Yeah, we'll just.
Corey, I am
Where
one
are
that
we?
does not have a brain anywhere close to yours, but I've been a believer and a researcher in so many of the people that come to contact. And the people around me, as soon as I say you have been to other planets, just go, yeah. Could you explain the chemical interrogation that you have had to go through in order to prove this very concept to other really high-level people in other organizations that challenged you?
Yes.
You know what I'm speaking of?
Yes, I did go through a chemical interrogation to where I accidentally gave up a few key members of the SSP Alliance. It was heavily damaging. Since then, very few of the command and control are making themselves known or taking part. So it effectively, well, that, and also at the time Sigmund was really hunting down people in the secret space program that were a part of this alliance. During this chemical interrogation, I did give them up, and they put me through a process. They wanted to know if I was a part of a program of one of the mind control or other programs. So as I sat there, they had lists of trigger words and phrases that they were going through for different programs. No, he's not from that one. They went through all of it. I'd never triggered. They were taking skin samples, blood samples, hair samples from me to look for trace evidence to see if they could find certain levels of radiation or other indicators that would prove that I had been where I said I had been. And apparently that came back as when the test came back, it proved, or it lent credence to what I was saying. So that's basically the overview of what occurred during that chemical briefing.
Next question up in left there.
Hi, Corey. My name is Sterling. I actually have a question for Jordan. So, Jordan, you mentioned that you are a YouTuber, and I know there's a few of us out here that are trying to start our own YouTube channels, me included. My friend here, Sabrina, and me are, trying to do exactly what you're doing. So, I was wondering if you have any advice for any of us out here who are trying to do what you're doing and spread our message in a loving way.
Literally just do it. That's exactly. You just get up and do it.
And have a good social media plan and network with other people doing it, do crossover videos with other people, try to keep a consistent message and theme, I think is a good thing, and do whatever you can to add production value to it, because a lot of, depending on the demographic, a lot of people are the entertain me people. The information is good, but they want to be entertained. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that you can do over time as you grow to grow your channel and your ability to have production value. But a really good thing is using social media and networking with other YouTubers and groups in social media.
And I know when you're just starting, there's a lot of fear behind being in front of a camera, or what am I going to talk about, or stumbling, or things like that. But the best way to get better is just keep doing it. You know, if Ralph Waldo Emerson, he said, do the thing to have the power. So don't have any fear, just keep practicing, keep putting yourself out there, and keep going with courage. And really, that's all you have to do. And don't overthink it. I get a lot of questions like, what camera do you use? I just use my iPhone. I said, hit play and no mic. You know, you don't have to overthink it. And that's the thing that we do so much. You know, overthink getting started on projects, overthink things like meditation or what am I going to do? How do I do it? Just do it, and you'll learn your own process of doing it, which is important because it's your process. It's not mine. It's not anybody else's. It's how you are going to come into your own doing it. So.
Right, and we're trying to present it in a way that we can all learn together, so we're still learning. But it's kind of like a middle ground. You know, you guys are already there, but a lot of us are just trying to get started. So if we all can learn together and make this really community, you know, I think it would work a lot better. But
Yeah,
thank
that's
you
the
so
whole
much.
point of what we're trying to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing I want to suggest as well is that you can rely on your friends and family and this idea called a freedom cell, where you find people who are interested in what you're doing, even if they're across the world, and you work together to help as an advisor to build you up, and then you move that to everybody. So everybody in the group is being built up, and their house is being put in order. And when that happens, then it's like an over-unity effect happens, and you can just go out and do anything. So, you know, having a clear message to deliver, doing it for the right reasons, not because you want to be popular, but because you have something to say, can really steer you in the right direction. So,
thank you.
Yeah, one more question in the back of the room.
People
then
can
we'll
feel
go to the
your
next slide.
intentions for doing the videos, so approaching it with the right intentions is important too.
Hi, well, I really appreciate, I'm back here. Hi.
Oh, there.
I'll be back. I really appreciate what you all are bringing to the fold and this great opportunity to be in our community as Contact in the Desert. So big ups to everyone for coming and all the producers and you wonderful speakers. It's a great moment in time. My question is, it kind of spirals back to what you were saying. You were talking to this other question about fourth density and unity and coming from the love consciousness. And I know maybe a little bit from your show, this reference to second density is group mind, consciousness. And, you know, I'm coming from the belief system that, you know, life is a creation of love and unconditional love, incorporating everything. How does that shift going up the densities from that sense of, yeah, it's collective mind from second to unity mind and fourth? And as well, another thing I feel is that our culture has really been manipulated out of joy and play and this sense of innocence and happiness and just the simple pleasures of us being together, being kind of cast aside as unrealistic, whereas, you know, the serious thing is being in war or conflict and buying into this silliness. So can you also speak to that, and if that's, you know, how that's affected in our culture?
Okay, what was the first question in a nutshell?
Second to fourth, unity and love consciousness through the densities. So when you talk about second density group mind and fourth density unity, what's the differences in relationships to that?
Well, a lot of people have, you know, we all have different belief systems about what is going to occur, including these cabal esoteric groups. What actually is going to occur, we'll have to wait and see. But from what I'm told, it's going to be more of a gradual process than what most of us are thinking. There are going to be solar events, there are going to be catalysts for change, but it's not, from what I'm told, there's not going to be a solar flash and then all of us are going to be flying around in the sky and, you know, it's not, I don't think that's the way it's going to happen anyway. So it is a spectrum that we have to go through. You know, we're working our way all the way up. There are other beings that have interacted in our solar system or been a part of this genetic experiment that are now karmically tied to us. They want to proceed up through these octaves, but they get stuck because we're not progressing. They can't go any further. So they have to come back down, massage things, try to get it to where we will raise a level so that they can. So we are all one, we're all tied together, and we're all in this journey back to source, back to oneness. You know, I've talked about, you know, we talk about our ego, our higher selves. Then you go higher and higher until self drops off, and there's just the higher source. That's in the same way, we're going through these octaves, and we're trying to reach our way back to source with all of these lessons we've learned.
You guys enjoying this format here today? I think our goal of kind of bringing conversation together is quite fascinating. We got one more comment here, and then we're going to move to the next slide.
Hey guys, just wanted to say I'm really grateful to be here and have this opportunity. I had a question back on the duality subject. We touched earlier on the dangers of focusing on the negative sides of that polarity. I've had experiences, I'm sure many have, of kind of unintentionally focusing on that, posting or saying something that I feel like is very positive and insightful, and someone comes back with, oh, you believe in aliens and conspiracies, and gets kind of into that defensive mode. I kind of wanted to ask about your thoughts on the opposite side of that coin, to where lots of people might say that there can't be negative ETs, for instance, because to be able to reach this kind of technology, they must have evolved in consciousness in a loving way, and just wanted to see if you have thoughts on the potential dangers of the only positive side of the duality concept.
Well, only subscribing to the positive side sets people up for control. We're already programmed to look for something higher, to follow, to worship. They had decided a while back that projects like Project Bluebeam were no longer viable on their own to use the way that people think that it's going to be used, as a giant UFO invasion. Too many people know about it. There are also ways to circumvent it. Now, the latest meme that they were going with was that they were going to introduce us to a very angelic-looking human non-terrestrial group. The Vatican was going to introduce them, or someone along that lines. And this group was going to bring to us a new non-human but esoteric belief system that we'll be expected to adopt. So that is a major danger in just focusing or believing that everything is of a positive polarity. Now, believing that duality and the negative polarity ends where our atmosphere does, I think that's a little naive, to be honest. But some people are relying on the intelligence that are being given to them, and if they trust that intelligence, then they're going to use that and assign their belief system to it. But I do think that there are dangers of not being in the middle and understanding. If you don't understand that there is evil out there, then how can you prepare to defend yourself against it?
So moving on to the slides here. How is duality supporting the expansion of consciousness?
It goes back to all evolution occurs through stress. During times that they see in the record different animals showing rapid evolution, it's occurred when there's been environmental stress. So the duality gives us context, like I was saying before. And we can use that process of understanding the positive and negative duality to expand our consciousness. And a lot of us have had some major trauma in our lives, but that trauma has also expanded our consciousness in certain ways. So it's a double-edged sword. What do you guys think?
Don't pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. Pretty much it.
Yeah, that was great, Jordan. I think, let me see if I can follow up after that. Being able to entertain an idea that you don't necessarily believe in can be incredibly powerful, because it gives you a perspective on your own beliefs. And your beliefs are the thing that you use to steer a course in life. They help you make sense of your world, but they're not perfect. They need to be evaluated and looked at. And if you can develop that ability to consider multiple different perspectives, it will literally expand your consciousness. It'll expand your point of view. And then what step that comes after that is being willing to let go of a belief that maybe doesn't serve you anymore. So I think duality is that thing that we use to help us through that. And we're not alone in this. We can all participate in this fun game together. So, yeah.
Taking the emotional charge out of that experience too of duality. When you go through your life and you experience hardship, you know, instead of reacting to it and pushing more energy into the anger and the frustration of it being there, being able to neutralize that charge and really look at what is the opportunity that's being presented there for you right now. What's the learning experience that's available in that moment, no matter how hard it is or, you know, how hurtful, painful that struggle is. Those are real rich lessons in those moments. And if you run from them, you run from that lesson. And life, in my experience, when you run from lessons, it likes to teach you them pretty hard, you know. So if you can meet them at that level, meet those experiences at that level, you forego having to go through that intensity cycle, ramping it up until you get to it. And so it's about, again, looking at the emotional triggers there, taking a step back and witnessing what's being presented there in the moment. Any questions right now on this topic in the crowd here? Renee, on your end?
Hi. I got a question in regards to the healing technologies that you say it's been kept from us. Could you give some more details on what that is and how they work?
Sure. And we had a conversation with Foster Gamble about a lot of the healing technologies and techniques that are out there, and a lot of these doctors are being murdered. I mean, the last I heard, there's over 80, is that what you were saying?
It's about 70 to 80 holistic doctors in the past 2 years have been suicided under questionable circumstances.
Yeah, so I mean, the technologies are out there, and the pharmaceutical companies, there's nothing more powerful than the pharmaceutical companies. I worked for one for a couple of years, and it was crazy. But yeah, I forgot totally what I was saying, because I revisited a very bad memory working at that pharmaceutical company. I'm sorry. There's a few too. What was the question again?
It's about how they work.
Yes. Now, some of the technologies that they have, I've talked before about how every life form has its own bioneural frequency. It's kind of something you could use if you had a strong enough detector. You could detect life signs in a forest by their bioneural frequency. Now, they can detect the bioneural frequency of cancer. They can focus in on that bioneural frequency and use their own frequency, basically sound, to turn it off, to nullify it. They've been able to do that for decades.
Mm-hmm. Like Dr. Rife.
Yes, Dr. Rife.
Yes. And there's a lot of also pharmaceutical breakthroughs. The age regression that they used, that was fully a pharmaceutical. It was a cocktail of different chemicals that they used that they called, I think, some sort of a therapy that they did over a 2-week process to regress you back. And that technology has been around for a long time as well, that they can use to, and it goes beyond repairing telomeres. It's actual turning back the clock of the DNA. And it's not really, I talked with Foster about this, it's not really, they're not affecting time per se, but they're manipulating the DNA to, instead of fast forwarding, to rewind, and then they can stop it at a certain point.
Got one question up here.
I'm a little nervous. I have 2 questions. One is, since we're moving up and we're trying to get everybody move up their vibration, what are our symptoms going to be of as we're moving up in ascension? Physical symptoms.
Well, physical symptoms, most of the symptoms are going to be interaction with your consciousness and psyche. Now, our neurological systems are very susceptible to these changes. And, people can begin to have various, neurological issues. Now, that can be anything from neurological issues in the brain, the scarier ones, to, numbness, different symptoms like that when you haven't had an injury.
Yeah, well, I'm having the top of my head becoming extremely sore at times. I mean, literally where I can't touch it. And nothing's happened. Nothing's changed. My other questions. So since we co-create our reality, what would you suggest we meditate on to co-create the most positive and, ease for a transition, for our transition for the planet?
That's the big question. We're wanting to get together. There are a lot of groups doing group meditation across the planet right now, and we need to find a topic or a focal point to get all of them to come together and focus on the same intent and come up with a plan. Because if we get all these groups together, it's going to have a major impact. But that, I don't have the answer for that right now. We are looking for a common thread to, pull people together.
Question on Renee's side of the room there.
Hi there. In your post-disclosure plan, you asked for mental health workers to come forward. I wanted to know if you had considered other healing modalities like energy healers, Reiki people. Sometimes people aren't comfortable with talk therapy, but Reiki and other energy healing modalities can help.
Yes, there's definitely going to be a holistic aspect to it, but to get certain, credentialed papers to credentialed mental health experts, I've worked with some of them. They're very leery if someone's not accredited or if they didn't go through a certain process of doing research. So we want to do it in the proper scientific method, in a way that it can be, the information can be submitted, to that community, and it meets all of their protocols. So it will be used as basically a Bible for post-disclosure when it comes to working with people with different psychiatric issues, people of different with different personality types, different belief systems. We want to come up with a plan that can be handed to them. Now, there is talk of a holistic side, because a lot more people are going to are looking to the holistic side, for even the mental health side.
And a comment on that too is if you're feeling that right now, if you're somebody that's actually out and doing that work there, there are people outside of the general DSM version of mental health professionals that are looking to do this work right now, or transition from, modern Western medicine to maybe looking at alternative therapies. So the more of you that are involved in this right now and putting your services out there and really kind of, diving into that work, the more beneficial it is going to be from the community.
And we have a person that's heading that up that can answer a lot more of these questions. And I believe at the end we have the slide that we'll show, that will have the email address of how to reach them. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'm a critical care nurse that had a stroke in 2012. So I no longer practice as a critical care nurse, but I'd be more than willing to put my effort and my knowledge with holistic medicine, which I've also studied, into what you're doing. So that was one thing I wanted to share. The other thing was the person that had, you said you don't know the next step. As a group collective, we work together throughout the whole entire world. So as you said, there's people all over the world. And as part of our meditative process, we can learn to join together psychically, consciously. It's a conscious group effort to raise the vibration of the whole planet, which Gaia is so happy that we're doing right now. So I no longer hear the screams of Gaia. I hear her joy. And as all of us throughout the world, we can activate our own personal bionosphere and then work together in a group consciousness to strengthen each other's bionosphere and then Gaia's bionosphere, which is happening right now, so that what was there 500,000 years ago as a shield around our earth is being manifested right now. And each of us can ask that the timeline for the best, highest good for the ascension of Gaia be made manifest. That's something that we can ask consciously, all of us together in unity.
I agree.
A comment that you just made there as far as working in the mental health professional field also, or the medical establishment also, is that people that have gone through the schooling, you know, when we went down and talked with William Tompkins a few weeks ago, one of the things that he talked about and so adamant about is you have to throw all the books away. The academic system that we've all been brought into is literally a corrupted program, is his perception. And so talking to him about that, it's interesting, you know? And so for people that are already in the medical field, you know, the medical industry, they're also witnessing how awful this industry is. Some of them may be more closed down to it. Some of them may be more connected to the financial aspect of it, but they're seeing it. So the more that the dialogue is, you know, if you've got maybe a cousin, a brother, uncle who's a doctor, who's a therapist, having these conversations with them again is one of those places that you can access that desire in them that is coming up right now to talk about these things. Take a question in the back.
Hello. That was my question. Since I've been involved with the UFO community for quite some time, and I'm also a psychiatrist, I've been familiar with Dr. Mack, Barbara Lamb. There's already a community out there in terms of psychiatric and psychology professionals that are in the UFO community.
Excellent.
And so that'll be good to have your slide. I guess my question was, what is the next step, and is this just on a psychological or a physical level? Are we talking about the solar flash? Are we talking about just consciousness and how people are going to accept this?
Mainly what
do we actually talk about?
Mainly the initiative is to help people deal with the collapse of their belief systems, the collapse of their reality, their self-created realities, the sheer volume of information they'll receive about the crimes against humanity that occurred to keep the secret, the fact that there are non-terrestrials that visit us, and there's a vast confederation out there that is eons more advanced than we are. Going from the state that humans are right now, cold turkey, to that state is going to be very, very traumatic. And it's not only going to affect people, I mean, it's going to affect everyone, even us. We have our own little belief systems in here that, including me, that when we get a full disclosure, we're going to have to rethink things. We're going to be one of the people that are, you know, having problems getting out of bed. But we're going to be a lot closer than most people, the people that follow this field or have a belief in it.
Yeah, let me just say, the way Dr. Mack did it was he had a network, the way, like through MUFON, that where you can get referrals, because this is going to happen on an individual basis. It's going to be somebody contacting somebody like Dr. Mack, Bud Hopkins, Yvonne Smith out in California. So it depends on your area. So I would like to be involved with that. I mean, not for any personal reason.
Right,
I
right.
certainly don't need the work, but,
Right.
but I think that's how it can help to organize this, is you have to have sort of a central network that can then make referrals to individuals who need that help.
Yes, that's
if there's
exactly.
going to be a cataclysmic event.
Right, yes.
So,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
And again, for those that are interested in kind of following up with this project, at the end of the presentation here, there'll be a slide with a contact email. You guys can reach out here. One more question here in the back.
Hi. Is there a plan B in case this whole disclosure thing doesn't work? No, seriously. Is there a plan B?
I say we all focus on plan A.
If there is a plan A.
Plan A. Let's go for the ascension. Let's go for the positive timeline. Plan B is, you know, we have a less than optimal timeline that we have to use as a catalyst to try to grow to get to where we need to be. The plan B is, plan B, C, D, they're nothing like plan A. Plan A is the one we need to focus on and co-create.
We won't let there be a plan B.
Right.
One more question here in the back.
Plan B is plan A.
So there's all these different sectors in society that are going to have to transform. I'm really glad we're talking about the medical side. I happen to work in an electrical engineering department at UC Santa Cruz, and I've really been trying to contemplate how universities are going to fit into this picture. How can we hold classes? You know, I'm thinking about like telepathically transporting people into a meetup, you know,
Right.
instead of, because transportation is prohibitive for some people to make it in cost and all that, right? But beyond the congregation for learning, do you have any ideas for the role of universities going forward? Universities are somewhat in a crisis right now, I would say. Higher education is falling apart.
It's going to fall completely apart. It's kind of universities have pretty much become an outdated concept that are basically used to indoctrinate people. You know, that's all they're really good for now. They were co-opted a long time ago for both agendas, both sides. They both have colleges that push agendas, and try to reform young minds. Now, their curriculum is going to be useless if we get a full disclosure. We're going to find out that there's a completely different physics model. There's everything that we think we know is wrong, even, you know, especially history. So they're going to have to come up with an entirely different curriculum and way to deliver it. And with the new technologies coming in, you don't have to go to a room and sit and listen to someone talk like us right now. You'll be able to interface with technology that will give you the training and education that you want.
That was my question. Like, I recognize that that's what needs to happen, and that this old curriculum, even that we have a top astronomy department at UC Santa Cruz, we have a top electrical engineering, but how can those of us in universities, have you had any insight about how to move that institution forward? I know that they need to change. Many people do.
Until there has been a revelation that the information that they're putting out is not correct, including history, then there's not going to be a real motivation for them to change. When everyone is shocked, them along with everyone else, they're shocked and they're given this information and it's quantifiable, it's true, then they can create the curriculum. But until then, you know, it's a very difficult question about universities. I mean, they're in a really bad spot right now in a number of ways. You know, maybe some university people can get together and do something sort of like this psychology post-disclosure narrative that can begin to at least put together outlines that they can use to quickly create new
teaching materials from the new information as it comes out, and maybe encourage board members or however universities work to approve different curriculum and approve the production of the creation of different curriculum. Other than that, that's really outside of my forte, and I don't really know how the university politics work.
Justin?
Well, I think part of the reason why the universities have been so corrupted is education is a great way to indoctrinate and control people. And in my own observation of what's happening in the universities right now is there's been the infusion of a postmodernist philosophy, which is the idea that there is no truth and there's no point in talking to each other because there's nothing to work out. So obviously that's not a really good place to start if we want to work out our mutual differences, is it? So I think especially the destruction of the humanities, the ability for us to speak to each other in dialogue and have debates and talk about ideas has been assaulted for 100 years at least. And the hard sciences have suffered a lot because they've been so over-compartmentalized. So what we really need to do is, I think, start engaging in dialogue with each other, especially the luminaries in these institutions, so that they can start to see that, well, there is a reality beyond the ramparts of what I've been studying for the past 10 years, 20 years, my whole life. So,
Jordan?
This conversation brings to mind another quote. I'm full of quotes today, but Buckminster Fuller, I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said, but he said if you're trying to create a new reality, you don't even worry about the existing one that's failing you. You build a new reality and leave that old one behind. So, what we have to do is essentially focus on creating our own re-education, our own relearning material, and honestly not worry about colleges. in my opinion, that's just my opinion. But
we are the universities.
And we could do that in the university. There could be groups that get together within the university and build out, their own kind of formatting or their own information. And I'm just kind of speculating there, but yeah, we're gonna need a lot of re-education.
And we do have people like Dr. Sala, who is, he was a university professor for a lot of years. He's put together exopolitics.org. And so there's, I guess, foundations for curriculum out there. But
and I would love to see a lot of different professionals get together and build their own. And they could have their own, history and physics and medicine and whatnot in an alternative university. That'd be fantastic.
And then debate it.
Yeah, and then debate it, because we need debate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And maybe it starts not inside the colleges, but maybe it starts with people that are inside of the colleges having private meetings and discussions in their own homes. If the system is completely, in a way doomed to fail, maybe like, Jordan said, maybe not working through the system is the best way. Maybe these are dialogues that need to be created outside of that. We're going to take another question at the front of the room on Renee's side right now.
Hi.
Hello.
Corey, speaking of health technologies, I remember you saying at the Conscious Life Expo last year that in your meeting with the Inner Earth beings in Alliance, I think it was Kari, is that what she's called?
Yes.
That you were told by Kari that basically you needed to clean up your diet and you needed to get healthy, you needed to eliminate certain things from your diet, and I believe that you said that included the consumption of animal products.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you if you see, in your experience with these benevolent, more peaceful beings, do you see parallels between slave culture and the way that we treat our animals collectively?
Yes.
And if so, do you plan on bringing this message with you out on your world tour and talking about that?
Yes, I do. And I hope to have people on the tour talking about high vibratory diets. But yes, the eating of meat was I was at a vibratory plateau. They couldn't work with me really anymore. I had just hit the ceiling. And I refused to stop eating meat. As I said, I was eating corn dogs. Y'all saw I was 63 pounds heavier than I am now, So what occurred is that somebody or something arranged for me to get food poisoning when I was up shooting at Gaia, and it was from eating meat. And I was so deadly ill that I got the point. It seems like something drastic always has to happen before I'll submit. But that was about a year ago, and I haven't eaten meat since then. And the difference in the way I feel and the way I think and the way I process these communications has changed dramatically. They can now approach me about things that spiritually, if you get yourself where you need to be, or you think you do, and you're working on consciousness and balancing ego, but you're not addressing your physical container, then you're not going to be able to reach your full potential of becoming a more a spiritual person. And it's a self-love thing too, So you have to take care of this container, and if you can get onto high vibratory diet, that's going to help. Now, that doesn't mean for everyone to get off of meat. Even, in the law of one, it talks about, your body, whatever you feel like you need to eat. And, we're all on a different path. So I don't shame people who eat meat. That I'm very careful not to do that, because that's going to make them resent the whole topic of veganism or not eating meat. The best way I've found is to show through example. If they see your skin looking more healthy, you losing 60 pounds, it's going to inspire them to at least look into it or dabble in it, or to begin to change their diets. So a lot of the times the best way to help people change that way is through example.
Jordan, do you have a comment on the diet side of things and health?
Yeah, we've been talking a lot today about meditation, ascension symptoms, and basically the ascending of the whole culture. If we really want to become the most spiritual beings we can and get our DNA coherent and harmonized, we have to take care of our physical body. If we don't take care of our physical body, there's no way our DNA is literally going to break apart and fail us. So, whether you go on a vegan diet or whatever it is you do, exercise, breathe properly, switch up your diet, switch up your personal care products. Every single thing you do, every choice you make is helping you become more spiritual of a person when it's coming from a place of self-love, like he was saying. So that's crucial. You're not going to know, I'm a parent of a 4-year-old, you're not going to know how to care for another person unless you learn how to care for yourself. So self-love is really the name of the game here, in my opinion.
One more comment here from the back.
Yeah, I just had a question. I've heard of Mr. Goode through Coast to Coast, etc., Michael Sala and David Wilcock bringing your name up. So
I'm sorry, can you speak a little louder, please? I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I had heard your name recently in the last 6 months to a year ago through Michael Sala, David Wilcock, and it got me interested in your past. I had heard a guest on Coast to Coast who talked about the DARPA program, which I'm assuming you were a part of. And
I wasn't a part of DARPA, but a lot of their technology filtered its way into the programs I was in.
Okay. The individual that went through the DARPA program, apparently he's now either an MD or a PhD in the San Francisco Bay Area. And he was on Coast to Coast a couple times and talked about going to Mars and the moon, etc. And it kind of brought me to a point after hearing your story that the left brain types, the brain-centered people who like nuts and bolts, this is more heart-centered, I can see. It's more conscious, uplifting, etc., which I totally agree with. But there's a whole lot of brain-centered people out there that could be brought over with some sort of a nuts and bolts kind of a presentation by you and other types that have been involved in these programs. have you thought about getting a group of you together to try to, say, go on tour and kind of get those brain-centered types on board with you?
Well, a lot of them are going to be together at the MUFON Symposium in Las Vegas in July. So that could be a very good opportunity for us to network with some of these people. But that is something that I'm perfectly willing to do. And, you know, the nuts and bolts researchers, you know, have a lot to contribute to this conversation. We all have pieces of the conversation to contribute to. So we're perfectly willing to work with people to present more nuts and bolts. And nuts and bolts, I guess you could kind of call this a little bit nuts and bolts, but William Tompkins and I have gotten together, and the artists are depicting a lot of the secret space program craft, the Navy craft, and we're going to debut that at MUFON as well.
Yeah, it's going to be quite spectacular. We're running out of time here. We've got about a 6-minute clip here from our trip down to San Diego to meet William Tompkins. This was the first time Corey and William got together, and being there and witnessing that was very, very interesting.
Yeah, William, when he walked, he's a character. When he walked into the house that we were in, he comes walking up to me, I shake his hand, and I tell him I like the work he's been doing, and he looks at me, he goes, "I have no idea who you are." And I'm like, and then he saw that I was thrown off, and he started laughing. So that's kind of how our dialogue started.
Yeah, that was quite a moment. So we're going to show you a little clip here.
There have been cases, and I think Corey even talks about having a pirate ship coming and seeing him, and that and other contactees have reported this too. Very strange, you know, familiar animation characters, you know, cartoon characters and things like that showed up in their early life. And we were talking about the possibility of you know, potentially this being one of those, you know, or something to that extent.
Yes.
Yeah, they'll appear to children as these real cute animal kind of things. Well, a lot of, when I reported it, I found out a lot more people had this experience of like the Peter Pan type flying ship that would come and pick me up from my home. And that was a screen memory they gave me, but it was really some sort of, you know, flying craft, saucer.
Right.
But the screen memory I had was of this very detailed pirate ship that was something out of Peter Pan.
Yes.
They would come and pick me up and bring me back.
Very interesting. I guess I had something similar to that too. They call it remote viewing today, but we didn't know that back then when I was a kid. But I used to get flashes, and I would be leaving the planet. I would fly. And at night, I flew a great deal. Like I flew, when I was younger, 10 to 12 times a month.
Yeah, I used to project. I used to do the same thing.
And I'd leave the apartment in Hollywood. I'd go up real slow, not fast. I'd fly around. I could see Hollywood. I could see the Hollywood sign up on the mountain there. I could see all the lights turned on. I'd fly down to Santa Monica. I'd fly around there. I'd fly down to San Pedro. I'd look at everything. And then, I'd just fly out. And flying out, I had no vehicle, but I would go to different stars, planets when I'm a kid.
Yeah, I did that too. I had an experience to where I went to the moon. And when I went to the moon, I saw a big area of light. So I went closer and closer. And when I got there, there were these large, like, spotlights on poles, like, set up, pointed down in this area, almost, not like a stadium, but kind of stadium lighting. And there were people all over the place standing there, one by themselves, sometimes two, but at most 3 people standing together. And I came down and I stood amongst them.
You focused down.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I, stood among them for a little while, and then each of them started having, I could see them having an experience, and then I had it to where my mind expanded through the universe, and I saw, it wasn't like I was traveling to different stars. I was like growing, and all these different stars were now within my field of awareness, and then I would grow again. It was like pulses.
Yes.
So I had expanded into the entire universe, and then I came back, and I was back on the moon, and then I was just pulled back to my body, and I woke up.
That's amazing, because I had similar things but it was here on the planet. And I can't say where it was, but it would be like in the mountains, maybe mountains in California. And I would be standing sort of facing a little canyon or a valley at the bottom of this area. And these people then would come in, and they'd fly in and they'd stand up. And then as they came in, more of them would come in, and they'd come into a circle facing each other like this, great big circle, maybe 30 foot wide. And all of them would be there, and they were telepathically talking to each other. And I would watch this, and then the scene would totally change, and I would find myself out in the galaxy again. And I don't know what the relationship with these were. But one of the times that I was flying out, a friend of mine showed up who was a Navy captain on a 10-kilometer long spacecraft carrier. I knew this fellow. He was a real nice guy. I don't know where this took place, but it was out in the galaxy. And this is strange. He was commanding this, he had the command spacecraft carrier, and he had all the supporting ships flying with him. And we flew from some location to a sort of a city. Now, a floating city.
Floating in space?
Out in the galaxy, a floating city, and we came in and like docked, still floating, in a facility where there were actually areas you could tie up to a dock. And many of the crew members would get off and they'd go downtown, and they would go to movies, they went to dance places. The crew all did this. And then we had his vehicle was taken out, they moved it back out, and they turned it around and came in on the other side for servicing, so that the ship and the supporting ships, the squadron, could be serviced.
Yeah, put the crew on leave and then take it in for service.
Right, yeah, and but I got this colored versions of this, all the colors, and the perfect pictures of this massive floating facility. It's obviously a stop-off between one place and another in the galaxy. But I'm just saying, for a kid to get this type of thing, not even knowing about remote viewing, okay? Remote viewing came up later.
Right.
When we were down doing that interview, Bill left us with an interesting phrase that stuck with us, which was, "Holy cats!"
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
So many moments between Corey and him dialoguing where that "Holy cats" moment happened, and we've been using it back and forth as a joke. You know, Bill, when we were talking about, when I first connected with him and talked to him about this comic book project, the reason why he's interested in doing this is he feels that the youth right now are absolutely the core as far as being able to break through in the future here. And so being able to raise our children and bring this information, I'm a father of two, you know, Corey's a father, Jordan's a father, you know, the idea of being able to bring this information and these concepts early on into life is key for that staged kind of plan. If you're talking about, is there a plan A or a plan B? If there really is only plan A, it's got to be a generational plan. We got to look at how we can carry that in and how we can, you know, move forward in that of way of carrying the information. Let's get up here. So this right here is the email address down on the bottom, postdisclosurehelp@gmail.com. If anybody's interested in kind of learning more about this project, coming on board, especially mental health professionals, we're really looking for a group to come together and start that dialogue. So
Yeah, please
again,
take a picture and share it on social media. That'd be great.
Yeah,
Appreciate
excellent. And that's, again, postdisclosurehelp@gmail.com. And special thanks to the artists. All this production that you see going into this work, this is all done by volunteers. These are people that show up to the cause and want to help and support. So big round of applause for everybody that's put this together.